The government office was thick, stale. Important men sat around a polished table. Generals, ministers, even a cardinal, his red sash a slash of blood against dark suits. Their faces were grim. They watched a screen. On it, a flickering image played. A man, not one of them, an outsider. His body contorted, his voice, not his own, echoed. It was a sound that clawed at the sanity of those present, a chilling testament to something ancient and profoundly malevolent that had breached the modern world. The room was otherwise silent, save for the hum of the projector and the occasional sharp intake of breath from one of the officials. These were men accustomed to power, to control. They commanded armies, shaped policies, guided nations, yet what they witnessed on that screen was beyond their comprehension, beyond their earthly authority. The footage showed an ordinary office, much like theirs, now a scene of chaos. The man, identified as an Indian attaché, writhed on the floor. His eyes were rolled back, white, unseeing, or perhaps seeing too much, seeing things no mortal should. He spoke in languages long dead, curses, blasphemies. The officials shifted uncomfortably in their expensive leather chairs, their usual composure fractured by the raw, unfiltered horror. The possessed man's strength was unnatural. 2 guards had tried to restrain him. They were thrown aside like dolls. Bones had snapped. The recording was grainy, but the terror was sharp, clear. It filled the sterile government chamber with a primal fear. The cardinal gripped his own crucifix, his lips moving in a silent prayer, a stark contrast to the guttural pronouncements emanating from the screen. Each official felt a cold dread seep into their bones, a realization that this was not a matter for security forces or medical teams alone. This required a different kind of intervention, a battle on a spiritual plane. The silence that followed the video's end was heavier than any words.
This cannot be allowed to continue. The implications are too severe.
We have summoned the only one who might understand, the only one who might succeed.
The cardinal then turned to the head of military intelligence, a man known for his steely resolve, now visibly shaken. The message was clear: conventional warfare had no place here. This was a battle for a soul, and perhaps for something far greater. The heavy oak door opened, slowly. Father Ricardo stood in the doorway. He was in his 50s. His hair was streaked with grey. His face was lined, etched by battles unseen by most. He wore simple black, a priest's attire. Around his neck, a silver crucifix gleamed dully in the ambient light of the sophisticated office. It was old, worn, a silent testament to countless confrontations with the forces of darkness. His eyes, however, were sharp. They missed nothing. They held a deep weariness, yet also an unyielding resolve that seemed to penetrate the very shadows of the room. The officials turned. A collective stillness fell upon them. Their hushed, urgent whispers ceased. They looked at this unassuming man. He carried no weapons they recognized, no insignia of rank. Yet his presence commanded a different kind of respect, a kind of fear, perhaps. He was an anachronism in this modern seat of power, a relic from an older, more terrifying world. Father Ricardo's gaze swept across the room, taking in the anxious faces, the expensive furnishings, the lingering chill left by the grotesque video they had just witnessed. He nodded once, a curt, almost imperceptible acknowledgement. He carried a worn leather bag. It looked heavy, not with documents or laptops, but with something else, something ancient. He walked further into the room. His steps were measured, deliberate. He did not seem intimidated by the powerful men or by the opulence surrounding him. His focus was elsewhere, on the unseen, on the enemy he had been summoned to fight. The cardinal rose slightly from his seat, a gesture of deference that did not go unnoticed by the military men, who remained seated, observing the priest with a mixture of skepticism and desperate hope. The exorcist approached the table but did not sit. He placed his bag upon its polished surface. The sound was soft, yet it resonated in the tense silence. He looked at the blank screen where the tormented face of the Indian man had been. He could still feel the residue of that presence, the evil. It clung to the air like a foul miasma. He had encountered it many times before in many forms, but each instance was a fresh descent into the abyss. He closed his eyes for a moment, a silent prayer, or perhaps a centering of his will before the arduous task ahead. Father Ricardo unbuckled his bag. The clasps clicked open with a metallic finality. He began to lay out his tools, not tools of science or statecraft. These were instruments of faith, of spiritual warfare. Each item was handled with reverence, with care. An ancient leather-bound text was first. Its pages were yellowed, brittle. The Latin script was faded in places, worn by centuries of use. This was no ordinary prayer book. It was a compendium of rites, exorcisms, and sacred incantations passed down through generations of those who stood against the dark. The weight of history seemed to emanate from its very core. Next, he produced a small vial. It contained holy water, blessed under specific conditions, potent. He placed it beside the ancient tome, then came the relics, a piece of bone said to be from a saint, encased in silver, a fragment of wood, reputedly from the true cross, nestled in a small, velvet-lined box. These were not mere symbols. To Father Ricardo, they were conduits, channels of divine power, weapons against an enemy that laughed at bullets and scorned human reason. He arranged them meticulously, creating a small, consecrated space on the secular table of governance. The officials watched in silence, fascinated, apprehensive. This was a ritual as old as belief itself, so far removed from their world of spreadsheets and security briefings. The cardinal understood, the others tried to. They saw the priest's focused intensity, his unwavering belief in the power of these objects. He then carefully unwrapped a stole, purple and embroidered with gold thread, its fabric showing signs of age and frequent use. He kissed it reverently before draping it around his neck, a visible symbol of his sacred office and the authority vested in him to perform this dangerous rite. His preparation was a silent sermon, a declaration of war. Each item placed was a statement, a challenge to the entity that had dared to invade this place. The crucifix he wore was now joined by these other sacred implements, forming an arsenal of spiritual might. There was no hesitation in his movements, only the practiced efficiency of one who had faced such horrors before and knew the price of failure. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, charged with an unseen energy, as if the very room was holding its breath in anticipation of the coming spiritual conflict. As Father Ricardo completed his preparations, a low hum began to fill the room. It was not from the projector this time, it was music, an orchestral score, deep, ominous. Strings quivered with unease. Brass instruments sounded a mournful, foreboding call. It seemed to emanate from the very walls, an unseen accompaniment to the unfolding drama. The music swelled, growing in intensity, mirroring the rising tension in the chamber. It was a soundscape of impending battle, of courage pitted against an ancient, unknowable terror, underscoring the gravity of the exorcist's task. The priest made a final check of his items. The book, the water, the relics, his crucifix. He touched each one, his lips moving silently. The orchestral score seemed to respond, its chords becoming more urgent, more dramatic. He was a solitary soldier preparing for a battle that few could comprehend, let alone fight. The officials watched, transfixed. Their earlier anxieties were now mixed with a reluctant awe. The music wrapped around them, pulling them deeper into the priest's world, a world where faith was a shield and prayer, a weapon against encroaching darkness. Father Ricardo straightened. He looked at the cardinal. A brief, understanding glance passed between them. Then he turned his gaze towards a door at the far end of the room. Beyond that door, the possessed man waited, or rather the entity controlling him waited. The source of the torment they had witnessed. The music surged, a crescendo of strings and timpani, like the crashing of waves against a steadfast rock. It was a primal sound, evoking ancient fears and the enduring human struggle against the forces that seek to destroy and corrupt. His face was set, a mask of grim determination. There was no fear in his eyes, only resolve. He took a deep breath. The silver crucifix lay heavy against his chest. The orchestral score reached a powerful, sustained note, holding the moment in a state of suspended animation. He was ready. The hour of confrontation had arrived. He would walk through that door. He would face the darkness. He would fight. The fate of one soul and perhaps the sanctity of this very seat of power rested upon his shoulders.